1867 Sports Show, back with you again this week for episode number Drew Bannister. And for those of you who are saying, who the hell is Drew Bannister and why does he represent the number 26? Well, Drew Bannister is a defenseman from Sudbury, Ontario, who just so happens to be the head coach of the St. Louis Blues. But back in 1992, he was the number 26 overall pick in the NHL entry draft. So let's get a golf clap for me right out of the gate for coming in strong with a very good representation of not only my hometown, but kind of leading into what we're talking about with the show. But before we get into that, it's kind of a reunion night here on the 1867 Sports Show because we've got the two most handsome gentlemen in the world joining us tonight, not only with my friend, Kyle Skinner. We've got former co-hosts of the Front Office podcast. We've got Kevin Kelly and the now monikered coach, Jethro Constant. Gentlemen, what's going on? Golf clap for the boys.
I'm a little confused, though, because you said two handsome guys, and then you mentioned us. So where are the two other guys?
But see, this is the thing. We like to throw people for loops when they're watching, so it's like an inception, right? They're looking for the handsomeness, but they can't find it. So they keep listening, and then they get to the end of the show. It's like, what happened?
I love
Wait,
it.
his camera cut out. Were you talking about me, or are you seeing double?
No, see, Jet's handsomeness just overtook the camera, so it just went black. But fellas, how we doing tonight?
Hey, we here, man. We here.
Yeah, that's right. Survived Canada Day.
Yeah, and again, anyone who survived Canada Day, kudos to you. Obviously, it's a fantastic day, and want to give a shout out to the schedule makers who put it on a Monday. Putting in work to just ruin everybody's week by putting it on a Monday.
I'd like to actually thank all my neighbors for using all their fireworks until 2 a.m, even though I have children sleeping and work in the morning. But thank you to all the people who didn't.
I honestly thought that I was literally telling my kids that there was an air raid coming. Like, it was ridiculous. I get it. Don't get me wrong. I get it. Fireworks are cool and everything, but we're at this stage in our life now where we're the grouchy old men who have kids who don't stay up to watch the fireworks. And it's like, you're waking up our kids. Turn off the damn fireworks.
I'm like a year or two away from appreciating a 2 a.m. fireworks show. But until then, I will be the curmudgeon that you talk about.
You know what's funny? Last night, when I went to take my two older boys to watch the fireworks with another friend of ours, Mr. Roberto.
Now, were you coaching the fireworks show or were you just attending?
I was consulting. I was just consulting. But you know what? The conversation that came up was the fact that when the fireworks started going off, his wife was like, "Oh, well, these are Jubilee's powers from X-Men," and then we're just like, "What a stupid power!" Like, the ability to shoot fireworks from your head. What a stupid power! We're like, "Oh, it's all awesome," until Juggernaut rips her hands out of the socket.
Very, very true. And for those of you who are still listening, this is a sports show. But again, this is kind of what happens when we get all together.
This is the inception portion of it. It's a sports show within a larger X-Men themed dialogue. What's going on?
Welcome back to the Battlestar Galactica fan club. But anyways, the reason why we wanted to get Kevin Jett on tonight was because we wanted to kind of evaluate the state of a few things that involve Canadian football. And who better than former 3-time All-Canadian Kevin Kelly and absolute beast pass rusher / coach extraordinaire Jethro Constant. So first thing on the docket, fellas, we all saw it. We've been kind of chatting offline about it. Let's get a golf clap for the Canada U20 men's tackle football team, who now have won 3 straight IFAF U20 World Championships, defeating Japan 20-9 in the championship game out at Commonwealth Stadium in Edmonton. So, I mean, how are we feeling about the state of Canadian football, where we're kind of, in a state of winning gold medals every time we take the field against international competition?
Hold on a second here. I hate to rain on the parade, the large gold medal parade, but Are we certain that this IFAF gold medal is truly representative of the best countries in the world sending their most elite all at the same time under the age of 20 for a competition? Because I don't know that this was the case. Happy for Team Canada. We'll celebrate that win for the kids and the coaches, I guess. But aren't most of the best under 20 American players probably worried about their NIL deals falling through the gap if they sustain an injury while coming up to Canada for a world tackle football competition?
They don't ask how, they just ask how many, Kev.
And in addition to my rant about fireworks going on for too long, I have the following list of grievances I would like to
So it's an interesting point that you bring up, because yes, I think that's on a lot of people's minds, where is it really indicative of the best talent being represented? Because even in Canada, I think that we're not getting the true representation of the best players actually going to play for this team. Hypothetically, you're getting a lot of good players, don't get me wrong. But yes, that's one thing that's always going to be brought up. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, it's still an international competition, right? I think where Canada's kind of put itself is in a really advantageous position because, one, U Sport are allowing their younger players to go and, participate in a set, in said tournament, whereas the NCAA is not. So this is obviously a hot button topic, because I think a lot of people are getting a little sore at the placement of the United States team, who went down there and lost both of their games to Austria and Japan. So,
as one YouTube commenter put it, this is worse than Pearl Harbor. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look at things for the way it is. There was actually some good players on some of these teams. I mean, watching that Japan team play, if that running back, again, I don't know his name, but if that running back's not being recruited right now by any type of U Sport or NCAA program, you're missing out, guys. This kid is an absolute baller. But that being said, let's just, before we go over to you, Jed, I'll just kind of put another thing out on the table for this tournament. So one, Kev, you say that the top talent's not really there. The top country's not really there. I mean, Brazil was there representing themselves very, very well, only losing 113-0 to Team Canada 1. So let's put things in perspective here.
Well, before you move on from that point too, the fact that we have to designate Canada 1 versus Canada 2 in the competition in and of itself, a little bit of a red flag as well too.
So and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's exactly where I was going with this. So yes, Team Canada 1 was supposed to be the original Team Canada. However, a few weeks before the tournament was supposed to happen, Team Mexico withdrew from the tournament, and they were kind of stuck with an odd number of teams. So Canada, being the good people that we are, we said, you know what? Let's throw another team in the mix here and increase our chances of winning a gold medal. Team Canada 2 on the board right now. So yeah, Canada had two representatives in that tournament, but obviously Team 1 performed much better than Team 2 did. So that being said, Jet, what's your take on this whole tournament and kind of where things stand, and where are we going with this long term? Do you think it's something that could be sustainable the way that it is, or would you like to see more of this, elite, athlete be represented at this type of thing?
Well, I think the first question I ask myself when I see these type of things are from the past years where Canada has won, US has sent representatives. Where are those athletes? So if you tell me that, okay, these athletes are in legit NCAA schools, or they're in legit youth sports schools or whatever, if you tell me that, okay. But if you tell me that, this kid is now at Blue Mountain State, and we
Great
never
school.
hear and we never hear of them ever spoken again, it's like, okay, well, the legitimacy of this thing is kind of sus, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Again, I'm happy that Canada
This is how Coach Jet hangs around with people in between the ages of 12 to 15, because he's now using the lingo that said demographic is using.
all they told me is don't use full words, and you're pretty good. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's suspect. They're like, what is that? Oh, suspect. No, sus. Oh, okay, yeah. It's just don't use full words. Don't use full words.
I legit just found out what Riz meant a few months ago, and I kind of feel embarrassed. I kind of feel embarrassed that I didn't understand what it meant the whole time.
Hey, you don't feel bad. You and me both, man. I was in the same boat. I was like, what are you talking? Speak English.
Me fail English? That's impossible. But I think as a whole, I mean, yes, there are some flaws with this tournament. However, let's put things in perspective and still give our kudos, because again, Team Canada could be going to this thing and losing, right, and not winning gold medals. So let's just put things in perspective. And again, let's get another golf clap for the fine men and women, representing Team Canada. One, Team Canada two, pick up your, pick your shit up, because obviously you guys were nowhere to be found. But there's a reason why you're
last time we invite two teams from Canada with
there's a reason why you're number two. But anyways, that being said, I mean, we're looking at the state of where football is in Canada, and obviously we all reside in lovely Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Pretty good football talent base coming out of this city in the last decade or so. So where things kind of stand, I mean, we've talked about a couple of guys on the show before. We talked about when, our good friend Neville Gallimore went from the Dallas Cowboys over to the Miami Dolphins. Looking forward to seeing him participate this year. We've talked about a few other guys like Jesse Luketa, Luigi Villain. But there's obviously a full boatload of players who are not only representing themselves in the, NCAA, in the NFL, but obviously the CFL is loaded with Ottawa-based talent, right? So again, because we've got two of Ottawa's finest on the show tonight, I figured what a better time that we can actually talk about said players, because we've all had, a year or two or whatever it may be of coaching or being around a lot of these players and kind of seeing where they came from being, where Jethro's sons are at now, just starting to play the game, to where they are now, making millions of dollars to play a game that they love. So, Jet, let's throw it over to you. I mean, obviously, you've had your hand in developing a lot of these different talents from, the Ottawa area, because you got to coach a lot of these guys, right? Maybe take us through kind of everyone that you worked with over the course of, your coaching career, and, maybe, evaluate kind of where they are at now, and maybe who's the next one on the radar that people might not know about.
Yeah, like you said, man, I've been blessed to work with a lot of them. Some of them directly, some of them I actually worked with as more like rehab, right? So from a physio perspective, but was able to talk football with them as well. But sticking strictly to football, I mean, like you said, it starts with Neville Gallimore. Clearly one of the most freakish athletes I had ever seen, even at the young age of 14, 15, and just from day one, you knew this kid was going to play on Sundays. So seeing him where he is now is not shocking at all. Not shocking at all. The next guy that comes to mind right away is Luigi Villain. He's such a he's one of the cleanest pass rushers I've ever seen. I really, really hope that given that he's in Carolina right now, that they say, hey, listen, let's give this kid a shot, because we got to start something. We got to start something in this culture here.
Brian Burns ain't there no more.
Exactly. When Burns left, that was like the first thing I thought. I was like, all right, perfect, an opportunity. So I really hope, and I know they signed Derek Brown to an extension, so that'll take some of the load off of the edges. So I really think he could potentially thrive there. But yeah, like you guys know, there's so many of them, man. Jesse Luketa, up to the guys that Lake Court Moore. They're all over the place. Ilianku. It's a blessing, man. It's a blessing to know that we were able to speak to these kids, be part of their journey in some way, shape, or form, and to just see that they're succeeding. And it's a shock to to some people, but not to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and 100% accurate, because I mean, you see what these kids are able to do at such a young age, and you kind of think, they're that much further along than a lot of the current best players are at this point. There's only, that much more room to grow for these guys. So I mean, the fact that they're all succeeding at the level that they are, I mean, it's a big testament to obviously you and all the other guys who were able to work with these talents. But again, it's just a matter of, look, they saw an opportunity, they took it. They really are, kind of making a name for themselves based on, what they've been given. And, Kev, over to you, because I know that, you and I talk about, one of the guys that we were both fortunate enough to work with as an offensive lineman. It's a big old lineman who's playing for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers right now. So maybe give us a breakdown of what people who don't watch the Winnipeg Blue Bombers of the CFL can expect when they tune in to watch Mr. Liam Dobson.
Yeah, you know what? He was a kid. My story with him years ago, I had always heard about him. I remember you coached him when he was in junior high in the early stages of his career, and the kid was a basketball player first. And then I remember you saying, you got to look out for this kid. He's huge. And I met him at school, and I was supply teaching at his high school. Then I had a contract and, kind of continued talking with him. His dad worked with me, and he mentioned to me that he was trying to create a highlight tape and wanted to get his highlight tape down to the States, try and get recruited. And I was like, well, I kind of know how to use Windows Media Maker. Share your film tape. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We're gonna go all the way back to Windows XP over here.
Yeah, and this is before Huddle, everybody.
Yeah, long before Huddle. And I just said, let me see your tape. And it was a March break, just kind of sitting around looking through his tape. And the thing that stood out to me right away was he was a lineman's build, but he was the fastest guy in the field. And his coach was really good at getting him into space, either as a lead blocker or sometimes getting him the ball. And you're watching this kid who is genetically gifted and is almost like a lottery ticket of this size and speed, competing in the high school football league in Ottawa. And he clearly stands out. And I feel like that the lesson I kind of learned from him, because, he received lots of great coaching, and then he, here in Ottawa, then he went down to Canada Prep. I don't know if it still exists, but it was a pretty prominent school. I think Neville went there as well. And, he played an American high school schedule. Then he gets a scholarship to Maine, then finishes off at Texas State. And now, of course, we know he was drafted to the USFL. And then now he's with Winnipeg. He's been there the last 2 seasons in the Grey Cup. But the thing that always stood out to me was the genetic gifts that he had set him apart, and then the work ethic that he brought to the table and the willingness to learn brought him to that next level. Like, that was the thing that really stood out to me. Was, I think it's like an equation. You can have the work ethic, and you can have coaching, you can have exposure. If you're missing one of the other components, and in his case, I think the key one was the genetics. It's tough. It's tough to break through. And, maybe he had those genetics, but let's say he never went and played that US schedule, or he didn't have the work ethic. It would have been really hard, just almost equally as hard to break through. But right from the get-go, you see someone at 15 years old and you go, this guy's meant to play professional football. He just has to go through the next 10 years of development first. And you're trying to tell that to a teenager, you know what I mean? Like, how are you supposed to get that to sink in? But really and truly, it was going to happen anyways. He had these genetic traits. His parents raised him as a good kid, and he was always going to be, a coachable kid that listened and paid attention in school and worked hard. It was just a matter of time and opportunities kind of meeting it. But the big lesson for me was, it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. If you're missing one of those traits, it's going to be really difficult to crack it to the level that some of these guys are. And Jet mentions Neville, he mentions Luigi. If you see these guys walking down the street, you've never seen them in person, you're going to notice them from the genetic traits they have. Like, they are carved from stone and are massive human beings that are meant for the gridiron.
Much
And,
like our good friend Kyle Skinner.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
Touche.
Drink it in, people. This is what male performance looks like right here.
No,
But-
no, sorry, go ahead, Kev.
No, I was just saying that like that was the big thing that stood out for me when I saw Liam all those years ago. I was like, wow, this guy doesn't know it yet, but he's got a career in football waiting for him, and it's just going to take a decade before it can come to realization.
Yeah, and again, to put things in perspective for people who maybe aren't aware of the Ottawa football scene, there's over 20 players currently in the CFL and NFL right now from the Ottawa area. You know, keep that in mind, right?
Yeah.
When you look at, and this is a question for both you and Jet. So Kev, when you look at kind of where things are going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, you obviously just got out of coaching, obviously your new job as a vice principal. So again, golf clap for you for walking up the education ladder. But when you got out of coaching, obviously you had been involved with some very, very good programs, very good players, and you've kind of seen them get to that point now where they're just starting to get into the university careers. Give us some names, and for the people who listen to this, that they should be looking out for that you think will be taking the next step to that, the next CFL star, NFL star from Ottawa.
There's a name that's going to come right to mind because I have a nice little anecdote about him, but his name is Michael Cornish, and he's a receiver going into his third year at McMaster. And I got a chance to see him first time since his recruiting meeting, which when he was being recruited was during COVID, and it was over a Zoom call with Coach Potasic. And I remember back then trying to express to him, I was like, listen, he hasn't had the typical high school career because he's missed out on his grade 11 year because of COVID. But this kid's got all the right tools, the potential. Like he just needs to get into a program. And I see him for the first time. And last time I saw him, he was a high school string bean and eager to learn and plays hard. Now he's again carved from stone, been lifting weights and training in a university program at an elite level at McMaster, and he's primed. This is going to be his breakout year. He's probably going to go to the East-West Bowl at the end of this year and be a prospect for his fourth season to go to the CFL. And I saw it long ago when he was a grade 9 kid and was just loved the sport of football, wanted to be around it. The type of guy that you have to yell at to get off the field because they're kicking us off, and he just wants to do more pass routes. That's a name that comes to mind right away of kids that are going to show something really quickly here.
Awesome. And, hopefully you didn't, hold him down too much when you were his coach, because obviously you're,
I did my best.
Yeah,
I did my best to stand in his way of success.
I was going to say, no offense to you, but if you're the one teaching him routes, I really hope that he got into a program like McMaster and took that to
He can run the button hook like nobody's business, let me tell you.
Now, and Jet, you've kind of got the unique distinction now because, like I mentioned earlier, your sons are getting to the age now where they're starting to, become those football players, right? So first, before I get you into talking about that aspect of it, maybe give us some names that you've been around, not only with the Cumberland program, but names you've seen in the OSFL that, people should be looking out for in the next, 5 to 10 years as well.
Oh man. Honestly, there's a couple of kids that come to mind. I'll mention one that I have.
You got to name some defensive line when you're coaching, Jet. Otherwise, you're not doing your job, man.
No,
We're going to strip you of that coach moniker right now.
All right. That's fair. Okay. So, but the first person that came to mind, I did not coach, but I've watched his film a lot, is Akeem Mesidor. That kid is going to be special. No, not because he's Haitian and I recognize my people. We've had this conversation 1,000 times, but his combination of speed, athleticism, instinct, and just fast twitch off the line, like he's going to be playing on Sundays for sure. And I think what's helping him as well is he was initially at West Virginia, and now he's at the U, so he's getting a lot more exposure I mean, just the other day I was looking at his social media post he put up, and he was hanging out with Jason Taylor. So I was like, okay, all right, that's pretty cool, you know. But he's definitely someone to look out for. Again, I'm a bit biased because I'm just surrounded by the guys that are on my team. But some of these kids are special, man. Oh my God, some of these kids are so special. Like, I have this D-line kid. His name's Ian Robb. Just physically dominant, and the thing is, he doesn't know how good he can be yet. You know what I mean?
And so just let everybody know the age levels of the kids that you're coaching right now, just so they can know how far ahead you have to project.
Oh, okay. So these, I'm coaching U14 right now. So I'm coaching a bunch of 12, 13, and 14-year-olds. But some of them, like, you could just tell, man. You could just tell some of these kids, if they keep up with where they're at right now, they're going to be very special. But this Ian Robb kid, there's something about him. I also have a 3-tech. I call him Tonton because he's Congolese. His name's Jeremiah Bwana. He's the quietest kid you will ever see. It's also because, like, everyone's yelling in English and he mostly understands French. So half the time he just smiles. But this kid, like, right now, again, he's Congolese. I think he's gonna grow into his size because I've seen his dad. His dad's not a small guy, but he's got that small, like, Geno Atkins, Aaron Donald, low center of gravity, penetrates into the backfield, lives in the backfield type of vibe to him. And he has a basketball background, so he has really good feet. So, you know, if he keeps up this way, even it's funny that Ian, the kid I just talked about, that I said, you know, he doesn't know how good he's going to be. He says, "Yo, coach, I look over at Tonton and, man, the way he uses his hands." And the thing is, he doesn't say a word. He's chopping, swiping. Like, at that age, to know to use your hands, and again, it could just be automatic. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really awesome to see. And again, I could talk about a bunch of players on this team. Hey, listen, blast from the past, Andrew Colson, man. That guy, that kid throws one of the nicest downfield. Oh my God. Like, when he throws it, everyone kind of just stares in awe. And he's 14. It makes no sense.
Good thing he doesn't take after his father. That's all we got to say.
Oh man. But yeah, and then there's Connor Hamlin. A lot of people know about Connor Hamlin. He's a phenomenal running back. And we got a lot. Again, I can go on, but there's one kid, and again, I'm a defensive guy, but this kid sticks out. He's a receiver. Okay. Everyone needs to remember the name Jason Ragumba. He reminds me of oh my God. Okay.
What a fresh comparison. He reminds me of nobody.
No, it's not, I can't quite put my finger on it. It's he gives me a vibe like I want to say Justin Jefferson, man. Like, he's nice, man.
These are some very lofty expectations you're putting on these 14-year-old children.
Hey, listen, I didn't say that they're like that. I'm just saying they remind me. They remind me of these kids. Just very, very smooth route runner, you know, but he will head top the shit out of you. Yeah, that's another term they taught me. But yeah, man, I think the guys that came before them from Ottawa have definitely opened doors. Like, now,
yeah,
there's almost an expectation, not an expectation, but there's no more surprise when you hear, this recruit, this stud, he's from Ottawa, he's from Orleans, he's from Canada, there's no shock anymore, because the doors have been blown open. Like, it started with Ely. It started with Ilianku, and then after that, you know, Neville, Patrice Rene, Luigi Villain, Jonathan Sutherland. You know, like, now there's no longer a shock anymore. Like, there is the talent per capita here is nuts.
Yeah, 100%. And again, it's awesome that we're hearing, these kind of up and coming prospects. This is a big thing that a lot of people need to understand, is that the way that these kids get the notoriety that they get is if people understand who they are, they know where to watch them, and then they kind of share, their talents around with highlight films, with, hey, they're playing at GG Stadium, this weekend against Myers Riders. Shameless plug for you there, Jet.
Next week.
Next week, sorry. But at the end of the day, like I said, the talent pool is always rich. And, obviously we'd be remiss if we didn't mention this while you guys were still on here. But you've got the, very unique distinction of coaching your oldest son, Xavier. What's that been like, seeing him take the field, kind of taking after the old man, and seeing kind of how he's progressed in his football life so far?
You know what? Like, it has its challenges, obviously, because I'm already,
because you got to deal with mom when you get home. That's the problem.
pretty much. But shout out to Tess, man. She when I get home, she's like, "Yo, how did he do? Did he work hard? Did he work hard?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, she doesn't mess around. You know what I mean? So, but it has its challenges, because you want the best for all the kids that you're coaching, right? I've always said, when I have D-line, like, for however long I have them, like, they're all my kids. I'm going to treat them all like my kids.
So you got enough, man. You don't need any more.
That's fair. That is fair. But I've turned into a fan when he's doing something that I taught him to do. You know what I mean? Like, I know that I once put on social media, you could catch me in the corner when he's going for a quarterback, and I'm jumping up and down. Again, I'm jumping up and down like everybody else, but there's a little extra something when it's your kid. You know what I mean? And really just trying to teach him the nuances of the game. And he just happens to be the same position as me. Will he continue to be? Who knows? But as of right now, it's like I'm just teaching him technique and then seeing him pick it up. And then the trippiest part is when he does something and reminds you of you. That is like, someone's cutting onions. You know what I mean? So it's really special. It's really special.
Yeah, well, that's great. And obviously, big love out to our man X, and keep on your football. Big golf clap for X. Love seeing him take the field after Pops, and making him proud, making all of us proud as well. But last thing before we get you guys out of here is, obviously you've been so nice to come out and kind of shoot the shit a little bit with us. But rapid fire. We talked about this, Kyle and I. Kyle thinks I have ulterior motives. I do not. But this year in fantasy, who are you higher on? Chase Brown, Chuba Hubbard?
Chase Brown, because Chuba, they drafted the Jonathan Brooks kid from Texas in the second round. So he's going to have that direct competition. They let Mixon go. They let Mixon go for a reason. They saw something, you know what I mean? Other than financials, obviously. But they've seen how explosive Chase Brown can be. So he might be the next great Canadian running back. You know what I mean? Like, he's not Tim Biakabatuka. He has his own style. So, but let's see.
Let's hope he doesn't have the injury history as Tim Biakabatuka.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. He's different.
All right, Kev. Chase or Chuba?
So it's always going to be whoever Jet wants to draft that I'm going to be high on and take before him. So also Chase Brown, purely because Jet wants him. So I got to go get him.
Well, Kyle and I were both very high on Chase Brown as well, because as we mentioned, Mixon is gone, and all Cincinnati has to rely on is Zach Bowl of Porridge Moss, as we've appropriately monickered him a few episodes ago. But I agree. I think that Chase has got a good future ahead of him. But again, I think Chuba could surprise some people if he kind of work on that pass game a little bit and could take over that third down back role a little bit. But anyways, On behalf
you
of
go.
18
You further crowdsourced your upcoming fantasy keeper list there with more members of the league. So golf clap buffer to Kyle for getting that scouting mission in there. Look at him go.
I mean, don't call me a smooth operator, just call me the champion. That's all you got to say. Anyways, but on behalf of the 1867 show, Kev, Jet, we have to give you guys a bigger golf clap than ever, because obviously taking time on your busy schedules to come and join us here. But it was great getting everyone together for a front office podcast reunion tonight. And again, keep up the good fight, fellas, and we'll see you around the bend.
Wow, we managed to keep it on the rails with Kev and Jet, which is no small feat. So
no. I mean, that was actually very much a better representation of what we used to do at the front office. Because again, much like we do now, totally unprepared, just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. But we make it work because we're just intelligent lads over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we figured we'd switch some gears here a little bit, because we've obviously covered football quite a bit off the top of the show. Maybe flipping over to the other sport of football, which the rest of the world calls soccer. But we'll talk about
the more appropriate moniker for the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. But Canada has had two, I guess, international headline making developments of late here. So both one on the men's side and one on the women's side. So we'll start off with the lads here first, because the girls always get to go first. So we're flipping it on its head for this show here. But Copa America going on, and Canada manages to advance to the quarterfinals.
To stumble their way into the quarterfinal.
Despite scoring only one goal this entire tournament thus far. So what were your thoughts on Canada being the only North American team to actually advance after both the US and Mexico ultimately bowed out before the knockout stages began?
I mean, was there ever a doubt?
Well, had you watched some of those games, I think there might have been.
All I could say is I think that, Team Canada watched the New Jersey Devils of the mid-90s and said, you know what? They're onto something there. They're winning Stanley Cups by not scoring any goals, but they're just playing lights-out defense. So
that Scott Stevens character seems to know a thing or two about soccer.
But no, all jokes aside, I mean, great achievement. And especially given the fact that in the World Cup that they were just a part of, they were letting up a lot of goals, a lot of high quality scoring chances. So the fact that they're now playing in some of the better teams in the world and they're limiting those scoring chances and keeping themselves in these games, I think that's a testament to the new coaching style that they've inherited, since Mr. Herdman's moved on. So I really do appreciate the way that they're winning these games, because again, it's soccer. You score one, chances are you're going to win. Like, that's just the way that things go. So I mean, keep the ball out of your end, maintain possession of the ball, and really just keep it away from the other team. It's pretty simple. So if you can do those three things, easy peasy. Let's keep on rolling here. So yeah, I mean, I think that anyone who was expecting them to make a run was obviously hopelessly optimistic. But hey, they're giving themselves an opportunity that no other North American team is doing, right? This is the way that we just are right now. So, I mean, yeah, let's just say, you know what? We're kings of the U20 tackle football landscape. We're now getting past the US in the, in the soccer landscape. Obviously, Canada is far superior to the US in regards to sports. There, I said it.
We're just painting in the broadest of strokes that you can imagine on tonight's episode here. But
you know what? The referees would shake the Canadian captain's hand. I'll tell you that.
I'll tell you that for true. I mean, it's nice to see, right? Like you were saying, I don't think anyone is going to be writing, folklorish tales about how well the Canadian side has performed this Copa America anytime soon. But at the end of the day, a win's a win. So they're going to take what they can get here. And the fact that they are advancing is a huge program development, right? First time they've made it to the quarterfinals. So that's a step forward. And again, even if they do happen to kind of bow out this round, is it the end of the world to kind of be peaking at the right time and use this as a stepping stone as they move towards the next World Cup, which is going to be on this side of the Atlantic? So it's going to be interesting to see how this team continues to develop, because I think where they are now and where they are 1, 2, maybe even 3 years from now are going to be very different products, right? You've kind of seen them rotate in some new pieces and some fresh blood into that system. And by and large, it's kind of paid off, but you can also see the growing pains at the same time too. So they're going to have their hands full with group winners Venezuela, who went 3-0, 6 goals for, 1 against. You know what? They put themselves in a chance to succeed. Crazier things have happened, especially in soccer. So I think anything else from this point on is essentially just gravy for this team.
Easy money, easy money. 6 goals against inferior talent. Team Canada's defense is obviously top class. So let's just see how good these Venezuela guys really are.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out in a hurry, but you know what? Good for the senior men's national team. And if you're going to flip it over to the ladies, so some developing news on that front as well, too. Obviously, the Paris Summer Games coming up. Canada, defending Olympic champions. So they have announced their roster, and by and large, kind of the usual cast of characters who ultimately got named to there. Obviously, Christine Sinclair is retired from international play and has kind of moved on to the next phase. But 13 out of 18 players on this year's team won gold with the team in Tokyo. And then 6 out of those players even won bronze back in Rio. So definitely a veteran heavy team. But they're also getting back some intriguing names who, from the last couple international friendlies and tournaments, were missing, whether it was due to injury or some extracurriculars or whatnot. They've re-injected some of those household names. So who are some names, now that Captain Canada is gone, that you think are probably going to step up and maybe shine the brightest on the international stage for the red and white here?
You know, one player that I've kind of gravitated towards when we, kind of knew that Christine Sinclair was kind of stepping onward into retirement, because of the way that she's performed very admirably at her position, is Kadisha Buchanan. I think that, she just brings a level of consistency. She's kind of like the steady Eddie of the group, right? Doesn't get doesn't get frazzled. She really is a positional player. She's where she's supposed to be at all times. She's tough. She's tenacious. I mean, every time I watch this team play, she's always getting the ball back for her team, which is exactly what you want out of a defender. So I think that Kadisha Buchanan is really the main name for me that can really become that steadying presence for, a team that's going to be missing, their lifeblood, over the last, 20 to 24 years. So that's obviously a big one for me. And then, I kind of look at, where we're at in regards to who's going to score goals for us. I mean, you've got a few names out there, but, the two that I kind of look at are Julia Grosso and, Jordan Whiteman. I think that they're two names that can really kind of take over that main goal scorer moniker for Team Canada. Not to say that they're, the experienced strikers that you would want, but again, they provide you with some of that steadying veteran presence, but they're also young enough where they've got that youthful exuberance on their side too, which is kind of that nice blend of where you see a lot of these international stars flourish. So for me, those are the 3 names that I think I'd be looking for to have a very, very big tournament when it comes time for the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like we were just mentioning there too, what's nice about this team is it's not like it's an unproven commodity that they're rolling out there and, this could go sideways in a hurry. Like, this is a team that is veteran heavy. They've got that steady leadership. Yeah, it's not Christine Sinclair, but, Jessie Fleming has been with this team for a while now too, the new team captain. It'll be interesting to see how she kind of does with that armband on and in that role, with everyone kind of turning to her, not having that, I guess, quote unquote, safety blanket that you can kind of turn to. And Christine, what would you do in this situation or whatnot? But by and large, the chemistry is there. They've proven they can do it before. They've been performing fairly well on the international stage in recent contests as well, too. It's not like they're on some 7-game slide heading into the summer games that people should be concerned about. Are they, blowing the competition out of the water? Are they peaking at the right time? We'll see. But like I was kind of alluding to off the top, this is a team that's getting a lot of players back from injury as well, too. So some of the key pieces to this team, and probably would be in the starting 11, haven't been there for some of these international competitions leading up to the Olympics here. So someone like Quinn, who, the knee injury that they're coming back from, can they get back to the player that they were pre-injury? Are they going to lose a step, right? Because Quinn played a pretty large role in the last couple of major tournaments for Canada when they were healthy. So someone like that, Jesse Fleming, I'm always going to show some love to, the local talent there, and Vanessa Gillies as well, too. But by and large, this is a team who I think fans that are tuning in should have lofty expectations for. Are they kind of that slam dunk, put them into the semifinals? Anything less than that would be a surprise. No, but I think that they are going to be absolutely competitive in every single game, regardless of who they're up against, whether it's, the last team to qualify or the American side. They'll be in all of those games for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, like you mentioned before we even got into the topic, I think that they've just got such a good group of returning leadership that they're going to be fine. They're not going to get rattled. And I think that they're going to put themselves in a good position to compete for a medal, right? That's all you can hope for. That's really all you can hope for, because you see a lot of these teams that just get all their hopes up to say, yeah, this is our year. And then they flame out in the round robin. Look, this team's been through it. A lot of them have been through it twice. This is the time for Canada to really kind of establish themselves post Christine Sinclair. And I think that this group of players is more than capable of doing that, for sure.
Yeah. And not to say that they're trying to, one up Captain Canada there, but, it's not an insignificant test for them to kind of see where this program is at. Finally having to compete against the world's best on some major stages in front of, millions, if not a couple billion eyeballs there that are tuning in to watch without Christine Sinclair, because she has carried that program on her back for
of course
a long time. And I think there will be some players who are now eager to kind of step into that spotlight a little bit, because she's a gravitational force. That's the first person every single reporter in the scrum is asking to talk to after every match, whether they won, lost, or draw. So there are going to be some new people that are going to become those household names moving forward for sure. So
yeah,
best of luck to both our men's team in the Copa America and our women competing in Paris. But we're gonna go to the ice now, because I know both of us have some thoughts, and a lot has happened since the infamous Game 7, because just how the calendar landed, and obviously the NHL wanting to get things in at certain venues, and it's got to be at the Sphere, so it's got to be this weekend. Bit of a whirlwind. It's Stanley Cup, parade, and all of a sudden we're into the draft, we're into free agency, we're into all sorts of stuff. So let's lump it all together here. What were your takeaways for your team?
Before I get into the draft and free agency, I didn't know, honestly, it's just a little quip at the term parade. I mean, what a sad display and turnout for a Stanley Cup winning team. I mean, just embarrassing on behalf of the Florida Panther fan base.
It was pouring rain in their defense when that happened, but
it's Florida. It rains there 90% of the time.
Yeah. That's why they call it the rain state, right? Not the sunshine state.
It's on the ocean. It rains a lot.
And that is Kyle's 100% unbiased opinion as an Oilers fan about the Florida Panthers Stanley Cup parade.
Yeah, still salty. But anyways, that being said, I mean, I think when you kind of break it down, because we could talk about this for a long time based on all the activity, whether it's like the first time in history that $1 billion was spent in NHL free agency, whether you see guys like Steven Stamkos, change teams, which you never thought you would have seen. let's just keep it to our respective teams, and we'll kind of evaluate, some things that are going on with the offseason. So again, for me, coming off of a very bitter defeat in the Stanley Cup final, I think Edmonton, didn't really have a lot of time to lick their wounds. It was right back to the drawing board. They're already talking extension with Leon Draisaitl. They had some very key names that they had to re-sign or let go. And then obviously the draft was right around the corner without a first-round pick. So the way that I see, Edmonton's offseason going, it's actually been very positive. They kind of made a splash on the opening night of the draft, trading up in the first round for Sam O'Reilly, who came on in the playoffs really well for London. I mean, I think that getting a guy like him, he kind of gives you a lot of the Dylan Holloway type vibes, where he's kind of like that, mid-sized guy, 6 feet, 6'1", 185 pounds, but he can skate. He's physical, and hey, let's be honest, he scored 20 goals. That's not a small feat, right? So I don't mind the move, because especially if you think you're going to be picking in the latter stages of the first round the next couple of years, just take a flyer. If he's there and you had him ranked higher, go get your guy. But the guy I'm really excited about out of that draft is their second rounder, who's actually one of the most highly regarded goalies in amateur hockey, which is Emil Vinny out of Finland. And I took that name because I didn't want to put you through that ringer. But
yeah, the 5-letter last names here, super tough there. But Konstantinopoulos or something like that, you would have let me fumble right through it.
Any of the Polish last names, I'll let you just kind of give a run. But no, this is kind of one of those situations where, as an Edmonton fan, and you can kind of sympathize being an Ottawa fan, goalies are very hard to come by when it comes to the landscape of the Edmonton Oilers. And obviously having a guy like Stuart Skinner in there, it's kind of been a revelation, having a homegrown goalie kind of take them to a Stanley Cup. But this guy, I think I'm very excited about. One, because he's been very successful in the international stage, and two, he's been playing in the Finnish Elite League for the last 2 seasons. So, I mean, he's already playing professional hockey against men. So, I mean, whenever you're an 18-year-old being able to play against, that level of competition, it just bodes well for whenever he does come over to the NHL. And I mean, you look at his numbers over there. I mean, nothing really scoff at, but 17, 9, and 10. So winning record, 2.72 goals against average. And then something that, maybe gives a little bit of a toss up too, but you see this a lot in amateur goalies and junior goalies, 891 save percentage. So not really blowing the doors off, but again, you see the tools that he's got. He's 6'2", he's 190 pounds, he's a big dude. And I think that if he's developed properly, hey, this is the goalie for Edmonton after Stuart Skinner either prices himself out or, signs somewhere else, right? Or, let's just say 10 years down the road, we got a 28-year-old who's primed and ready to take over, like a Pekka Rinne, right? So, yeah, I mean, Finnish goaltenders in the NHL have had a lot of success, and let's just hope that he kind of keeps with that pedigree. And, if I had to pick one of the free agent moves that the team made, I mean, getting Adam Henrique back, I think, was such a big moment for Edmonton, because one, the reason why they didn't have a first-round pick this year was because of the Adam Henrique trade. But if you watch that playoff run, Adam Henrique was so vital to their success. Bringing the guy back for less money than he would have gotten on the open market speaks volumes to where all these guys think the Edmonton Oilers are going into next year, which is they can compete again for a Stanley Cup. So love that move. You got him back for 2 years at a very reasonable $3 million cap hit. That's extremely good with the new management crew that's taking over. And yeah, I mean, I will give a little honorable mention to the family reunion, as you so appropriately named it, with another cousin, Jeff Skinner, going over to the Edmonton Oilers to take on the new goal scorer, motif with the Oil.
Well, I think it's all part of your secret plot to eventually convert me into an Edmonton Oilers fan, just recruiting all of my distant relatives to don the jerseys out there. But
once we get some Kirkwoods in the NHL, we make sure to get in Ottawa.
Yeah. But I mean, it's been a really strong offseason, right? And it's especially impressive because of ultimately how deep they went and how little time they had to scheme all of these contracts and maneuvers and all of that up. Now, you can obviously sit there and say, well, what else is the GM really going to do while this playoff run is going? You can't trade for anyone. So he's probably had these contract offers locked and loaded behind closed doors. But by and large, right, that they didn't have the luxury of these long off seasons to be contacting players and agents and this, that, like some of these other teams who didn't even qualify for the playoffs were. So they approached this off season ready to roll. And I think one addition that, you didn't mention there that I think we are probably going to be talking about a lot as next season rolls on is Victor Arvidsson, who, again, only played a handful of games last year because of injury. But if he returns to even 70% of what he was, back in the Nashville days or even early LA King days there before, the injury bug started popping up, that's a massive addition, right? And you already mentioned too, Adam Henrique, 2 years, $3 million. Corey Perry's back, so you're guaranteed to at least make the Cup final. What happens from there, whether it's the curse of Perry or not, you've got a deep playoff run in your future. But Arvidsson coming in 2 years, $4 million, like everyone, like you were saying, is willing to kind of take that pay cut because I can guarantee you Columbus or, now Utah, if they had have offered him contracts, probably would have been for more, right? But everyone sees how close this team is to win. Obviously, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final and a couple bounces their way, and that could have been a much shorter series as well, too. So really, this is a team that's on the cusp, and I think with the additions that they did and not really losing a ton, they're already talking Draisaitl extensions and bringing in some savvy vets to add depth scoring, which is kind of what I think killed them down the stretch. Ultimately, you would love for McDavid or Draisaitl to have had better game 6s or 7s, but by and large, I don't think anyone is blaming McDavid and his Gretzky breaking records as the downfall of the Oilers last season. So we'll give them a pass for sure. But the depth that they've added and bringing back the key pieces that they really need, and you even see some of the pieces that they did lose, the contracts they signed elsewhere. It's like, okay, well, it's the classic, you see it in the NBA all the time there, where team goes on a deep run and suddenly the 7th guy in the rotation there is signing this big money deal, and he goes to his new team, and it's like, what the hell did we pay this guy this much money for? And then you're stuck with it. It might be a little bit of buyer's remorse with a few people. We won't throw anyone under the bus, but there were some interesting deals that got lobbied about in the opening 2 days of free agency frenzy there.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as you don't want to lose a guy like a Warren Fogle because he's a very guts and blood type of guy, like he's what every fan base wants to have. The fact that you're getting Victor Arvidsson at a lesser cap hit than that, I think that's a win for the Edmonton Oilers, and I think that the LA Kings, kind of in desperation mode, are trying to say, well, we can't beat them in the playoffs, so let's bring in some guys who played for them so that way you can maybe get an edge on them. So, like I said, overall, I'm very happy with the way that the offseason has been going so far for Edmonton. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's get over to you because you came in on such a heater with the Linus Ullmark trade that it only could go downhill from there. So how are we feeling about Ottawa?
Do we have to? I mean, this is just what being a Sens fan really is. It's one step forward, one step backwards, and more questions than answers usually when you end up seeing where the dust ultimately ends up settling, right? You bring in Ullmark, which I think if you look at what it took to acquire him, even if he does walk after a year, we already talked about it. It's a great addition. It's something you need to do. You need to see, is this a flawed core that was just a goaltender away from making the playoffs? Or is it time to move on from a Shabbat or a Batherson or someone like that? And well, even with a former Vezina winning goalie, it all still went to hell in a handbasket. So it's going to be a very telling season in that regard, but that's a great deal. Then you go and you ship out Joseph plus a 3rd rounder for everyone's favorite player, future considerations coming in.
He's the best.
Yeah, never let a fan base down, that considerations family. But So you take a step backwards with that. You can make the argument, well, needed to free up money. Maybe there's another move to come, and that might all still be true. But, you know, that coupled with the Chikrin deal, it's just bad asset management, because you cannot sit there with a straight face and try and sell it to Sens fans, especially when everyone is reporting, oh yeah, no, there were better deals available for Chikrin that the Sens ultimately turned down because they wanted a plug and play piece, right? Coming back. And other teams might have been willing to give up whatever, a first rounder or a bunch of draft picks and whatnot. But does that help this team right now? No. So I think this is very much a case of you got to take the good with the bad, because even later on that afternoon, after the bombshell of, cool, we're paying draft capital for someone else to take an actual rosterable player, then you sign Pinto to the bridge deal, which $3.75 million AAV over 2 years. I think it's a smart move, because even though it's someone who has that high end potential, he's only played 140 games over 4 years. Now, some of that's due to injury. Some of it's the great gambling fiasco of 2023. However he got there, you've got a limited sample size. And I think if you asked every GM in the league, would you have given Josh Norris that contract after that limited sample size? Every single one of them, except for Pierre Dorion, would have said, absolutely not. But here we are. So I don't mind the cautious approach. You get Pinto back, shores up that depth up the middle. It adds some roster flexibility, because now you can kind of move Grieg up and down that lineup and see, is he a center? Is he someone you ultimately put on a wing to get into a top 6 position? Opens doors. But then again, you take a step backwards by adding David Perron at age 36, 5 consecutive seasons of dwindling offensive performance, and you sign him for 2 years at $4 million per year. And he just got fresh off a suspension for cross-checking Zub in the face last year. So it's like, I don't know. We're not there behind closed doors. Obviously, there were some bigger concerns than just on ice production. Where you fall on that kind of spectrum of rumors as far as, what guys are like in the locker room, well, we probably won't know until there's some, Ian Mendez pens a 1,500-page expose tell-all novel about, the Ottawa Senators past 30 years. But it's just from the outside, with the information that's available to us, it's just bad asset management. So it's, good, then bad, then good, then bad. I think we have to assume that, based on how the Dorian years went, we've seen the attempts to try and go out there and make a big splash, and how, punting away things for, we think we're one piece away and this is the guy to get us over the hump, how spectacular that's blown up in their face for the team. So is it a bad thing that they're having probably one of the most unsexy off seasons of recent Senators memory, where most of the signings are essentially bottom 6, if not bottom 3 acquisitions here? I reserve my judgment until I see this team on the ice. But
I choose not to vote.
Yeah, but I really do. Like, there's not a ton to get excited about. I think even the most optimistic of Sens fans, it's, well, let's give them a chance. Let's see what they're like. Yeah. If you're sitting out there being like, home run, killed the offseason, I don't know who spiked your Kool-Aid, but you're on something, because this is not a 450-foot bomb to dead center field here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're accurate in saying it was just a weird couple of days for the Senators, and there's 2 moves that were really head scratching to me, and one of them you already touched on, signing David Perron to 2 years, $4 million per year. When you look at what Chicago got Tyler Bertuzzi for, do you not think that ponying up an extra $1.5 million would be able to bring a guy like that into your lineup would be more beneficial for you long term? I mean, that really kind of stuck out as like, that's a perfect move. I think if the Senators did nothing else and they brought in a guy like Bertuzzi at the number that he came to Chicago in, I think that's a home run off season, because you don't need to do a whole lot. You've now turned it over to those, young players who have now become your veterans on that roster. You now have the flexibility where Tyler Bertuzzi can play first, second, or third line if need be. So you have that, flexibility down the middle, you have the flexibility on the wings. Having David Perron there, I mean, obviously he's long ago, he was a flash in the pan with Edmonton, where everybody thought that he was going to become, the next 40 goal scorer there. And we all saw what happened with his stint there, right? Now you're getting him at a very advanced age, and his production's been dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. So the other one that's just, I don't understand. I didn't understand the trade when it happened. I don't understand the way that he was developed. I don't understand the way that he was unceremoniously just released, which is Brandstrom.
Mm-hmm.
How you can go from that being the prize acquisition and the only piece that you got back for trading away your captain and top 20 player in the NHL, Mark Stone, is beyond me. Because if I'm that coaching staff, I'm getting him in. I'm like, look, I'm doing whatever it takes to get this guy to the level that we need to get him to, whether that's popping him in the lineup right away to get him minutes, or, hey, he's not ready yet. Let him go develop back in Sweden. Let him develop in the AHL. Get him the minutes he needs to become the player that he needs to be. Now, you obviously failed in that regard, right? You didn't develop him. Honestly, like you didn't develop him. You didn't do right by the player. You didn't do right by, the player you traded away, because I think anyone who gets traded away must be looking back. It's like, you know what? That guy turned into a star player and they traded him for me 1-for-1. I must be, pretty damn good. Right? So not only that, but now you've said, you know what? We're just going to cut bait. Who do you end up signing with?
Well, it's the Senators West Coast reunion tour, because both Brandstrom and Parker Kelly are probably going to go out and win the cup next year because they both signed with Colorado. So
right, yeah, Colorado. But I mean, you look at the cap hit that he signed for, $775. Like, you can't pony up $750,000 to bring him in on a veteran minimum contract and let him try to earn his spot after you've moved Jacob Chikrin. Like,
well, this is where, again, I would love to be absolutely tearing Steve Staios to shreds, because I disagree with a lot of the moves he's already made. But I'm preaching patience for at least seeing what this team looks like, because Steve Staios, for better or worse, is going to sink or swim with the decisions that he has made this offseason.
Yep.
You can make the argument that a lot of the moves that he was making were kind of cleaning up Pierre Dorian's mess, right? And Eric Brandstrom, the proudest day as a Senator making this kind of acquisition. He's going to be the franchise. He's going to be the savior on the blue line. He's the next big thing, right? He's moved on. So kind of that last remnant of the Dorian era has now sailed out. Chikrin, that was a Dorian acquisition, and he's now gone as well too, right? Matthew Joseph in that bloated contract, he's now gone as well too. So it's almost as though he's trying to do everything in his power to put his fingerprints all over this team. Whether that's for better or worse remains to be seen. But at the end of the day, with 100% clarity, the built-in excuses of, I inherited this. This isn't my mess. I'm just dealing, with the hand that I was dealt here and trying to play it out to the best of my abilities. All of that is gone for 2024-25. So if this team fails to perform, it's no longer, oh, well, that was a Melnick decision. Oh, that was a Doherty decision. Oh, that was a DJ choice to constantly play this kid. It's your roster. It was your draft. It was your last trade deadline. It was your offseason. If this team fails to perform, it is on no one else but Steve Staios. And I hope that he's able, for his sake, to go out there and be frisky for the playoffs. If they're at least still competing and it's not the goddamn November swoon that eliminates the team before we've even, flipped the calendar into the new year. If they're competing for a wild card spot or actually make it, Matthew Tkachuk, I've already said it. He was saying in his Stanley Cup award acceptance speech how Brady Tkachuk needs to be in the playoffs because he's built for it. Like, this is a team and a city that needs to see postseason hockey. But if they don't, there is nobody else to blame other than Steve Stamkos. So he is going to wear the results of this season 100%.
And I think that with the move that he's made, he's more than willing to do that. So, which is what you want to see, out of a decision maker, because he's willing to go out on his sword. He's not.
Well, we'll see that. It's easy to be like, oh, buck stops with me when you're besties with the owner, right?
It's true.
I think you've built in a little bit more job security than just John from, Trois-Rivières, Quebec, who's just in there and, has no ties to Andlauer whatsoever. But like you say, if he's pointing the finger at anyone other than himself, if this team fails to live up to expectations, that's a huge red flag that we could be in for years of mismanagement and incompetence if he doesn't see that these were all his decisions and these are his guys now.
Yeah. All in all, like I said, we have to wait until we see the product on the ice. And let's just hope that they can get through November above 500 and then go from there. Because if they can do that, they're a playoff team. Yeah. So, that's just the nature of the Senators over the last, decade. So we'll hope for your sake that the old playoff, ghosts of yesteryear have all gone and they can kind of rewrite their own story. But overall, it's kind of a weird start. Maybe they've got something else up their sleeve that'll kind of, make up for some of these things. But every time you get the Ullmark move, which is a great thing, then you go to, the Perron signing. And like I said, it's just, it's hard to read. It's very hard to read the way, where they're going with this, but obviously they're more in tune with things in their building than we are. So let's hope for your sake and for the Sens fans' sanity that they're on the right track here. But from
a content standpoint, we have stuff to talk about if this season goes off the rails.
As our friend Bob Cole says, oh baby.
Well, we got one final thing to touch on here. We would be remiss if we didn't at least bring it up here. So we'll do a quick flyby of the NBA draft, which, spoiler alert, Bronny James is not coming to Toronto. So sorry, my friend. Again, some interesting selections for Toronto. And, there are some players who I genuinely think have a future with this franchise. And there are some, okay. I can see why you maybe picked that, but I don't agree with the pick. So I'm going to run through them and give you some Cole's notes on the 4 Raptors here. You tell me who you like the most and why. So at number 19, you had 6'4" shooting guard out of Baylor, Jacoby Walter. Definitely isn't afraid to shoot the ball. 220 3-pointer attempts last year alone, averaged 14 points, 4 rebounds, 1.4 assists a game. So definitely a scoring guard. He is not going to be your, point guard distributing the ball around, but he really does need to still develop that passing ability and kind of that playmaking ability and even a little bit of his ball handling. Because right now, at least if he is going to make this team in his rookie year, he's kind of going to be that spot up shooter role, which isn't a bad thing. I think this Raptors team needs more shooters, but we shall see. Number 31, then you had Jonathan Mobo, who 6'6", undersized center, huge wingspan, which just screams Raptors pick right there.
Yeah.
But no 3-point ability whatsoever. In his college career, he went 0 for 2 from beyond the 3-point line. Not great, but again, he might end up kind of getting converted to a wing kind of perimeter defender there because he is known for his ability to disrupt things out on the defensive side of the court there, out at the wings, and really challenge all the way out to the 3-point line. I think because he's only 6'6", he might get bullied a little bit in the paint there, so I don't see him as a long-term fit at center. He's maybe someone that you slide in behind Jakob Poeltl, who, when you want to get small ball lineup, he can kind of roll out there. But best friends with Scotty Barnes. So, okay, well, we can see why he maybe went higher than any other team had on their draft boards. Number 45, then you had Jamal Shed, standout point guard at Houston, won National Defensive Player of the Year, was a finalist for National Player of the Year. Obviously, Canadian Zach Edey, shout out to him, ended up actually winning it back to back. Houston was a number 1 seed. They went 30-4, largely because of his play. And you saw them as soon as he rolled his ankle against Duke, the team crumbled. So he is a bona fide big game player, only 6 feet tall, so definitely undersized, but is known as one of the best defenders in the entire draft class, regardless of position, in terms of keeping his man in front of him. He plays a lot bigger than his size for sure. And then last, number 57 overall, Ulrich Chomchi, who was the youngest player in the entire draft, NBA Africa Academy graduate, played all of 3 games for them. In those 3 games, he averaged 13 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 blocks, 1 steal, 6'10" power forward. And oh yeah, he's from Cameroon. So does that remind you of a certain player that they just traded who they're kind of hoping he might become Pascal 2.0 here? So out of those 4, who are you most high on and why?
I think Jamal Shed is the far and away player that everyone should be most excited about. The fact that he fell that low in the second round, I think, is the way that the current NBA mismanages their scouting, right? They look at an undersized point guard as a leper. They don't want to touch them, right? Well, guess what? The Raptors had a pretty good run with 2 undersized point guards and won an NBA championship with rolling 2 guys out who were 6 feet and below with Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet. Jamal Shed gives me a lot of Kyle Lowry vibes. Great defender, bulldog, tenacious, leader of men, and brings everything you want out of your 1 spot. But if I'm going to go off the board, the thing I was most excited about on draft night was actually the trade they made with Sacramento and getting back Davion Mitchell. For people who don't understand or don't watch a lot of basketball, let me just break this down for you. Davion Mitchell was a former lottery pick, right? Sacramento
former national champion too.
Former national champion as well. Sacramento is known not as the Sacramento that they are now, which is a competitive team, but they are known for drafting players very high in the lottery and mismanaging their careers, right? Davion Mitchell was in the running for Rookie of the Year his first year in the NBA. Every year after that, you start to see his minutes drop and you start to see his production slip a little bit. Davion Mitchell possesses everything that an NBA team would want in a backup point guard. The fact that you locked up Emmanuel Quickley to a 5-year extension is massive. Now you've got in 2 solid backups with Davion Mitchell and Jamal Shed, who will now give you a 3-headed monster at point guard, which I think anyone who watches today's NBA, you need to have 3 guys who are capable of bringing the ball up. Not to mention, if you can roll a small ball lineup like you just mentioned and have all 3 of these guys who are excellent defenders on the court at the same time, well, hey, now we can focus on, you know what? We don't need Quickley to play defense. Let's just let him score. Let these other 2 guys just kind of hound the other team's point guard and shooting guard for a few minutes. So I think those are, the 2 things that I was really excited about with the Raptors, because ultimately didn't understand, other than being, Scotty Barnes' best friend, the number 31 pick. I kind of understand the Chomchi selection because, again, at that point, you're just picking potential. And the fact that he just turned 18 years old, the fact that he possesses
literally by one day, December 30th is his birthday. Yeah.
By one day. So, the fact that you now have somebody in your system that can progress, you can take 2 to 3 years to get him to that point of what's he going to look like when he's 19 or 20? He's going to be over 7 feet, probably. If he can put on another 20 pounds, well, that's a pretty big body. There's a pretty good center, for Philadelphia, who was a much earlier pick, but they had to wait a very long time to get him in their lineup. It's paid dividends, right? So again, that's wishful thinking. Who knows if you're going to get the next Joel Embiid at pick number 58, or who knows if you're never going to see this person ever again. So, I mean, there's a lot of enigmas wrapped in this draft. I think Walter in the first round is a solid pick, something that you needed. But ultimately, when you look at some of the people who were on the board at the same time, it's like, was Isaiah Collier maybe a better choice at that selection? But they kind of made
Ryan
up for
Dunn
that.
was still there as well,
yeah,
too.
exactly. So, but they kind of made up for that with the Jamal Shed pick in the second round. So ultimately, I again, I look at it like I look at the Raptors, the Senators offseason so far. It's like some really good stuff, and then some, okay, well, let's see where these things go, and we'll evaluate it, maybe 2 to 3 years down the line. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think that they bounced back in a big way. A lot of people were confused at the direction that they were going, but now that they've got the 2 major assets that they got back for OG and Anunoby locked up long term, good. Now that they've exercised, the option of Mr. Bruce Brown from Indiana, and are going to, hopefully move him for something of need, which has kind of been the speculation all along, because right now, where is he playing in that lineup?
Yeah.
Right? He's an undersized small forward. So, yeah, let's see where this whole thing nets out. I think the next, week or two for Toronto is really going to be indicative of where they end up in the next 5 years, which is kind of exciting, because this is kind of all right, are we going to absolutely tank so that way we can kind of land one of these top level prospects like a Cooper Flag next year? Or, do we take the chance of, let's compete this year, see where we are, and then we can kind of reevaluate after the season's done?
Yeah. This whole draft for the Raptors was the most Raptor-esque draft that I think you probably could have drawn up, because of the simple fact that I think Masai obviously built a championship team, right? And I've been fairly critical of him on a few of these episodes here. But I think what happened this offseason was there was a come to Jesus moment where everyone in the Raptors brass and front office sat down and went, how did we get to where we were in 2019, right? Obviously, a Kawhi Leonard big swing happens once you're ready to compete. But how did we lay the blueprint for it, right? It was, we had a really good G League team, right? They won the championship. Fred VanVleet and Pascal and, all these players that came up through that system. So I think what you're probably going to end up seeing here, right, is Walter will probably be the one that ends up breaking camp with this team to start. And then the other 3 are going to probably start cutting their teeth in the G League. And they're going to try and mimic that development model as far as how do we create the next FVV or Pascal, right? That can then come up through, and, we've ingrained what it means to be a Raptor in them, and they're ready to make an impact on day one rather than, kind of just eat up whatever minutes RJ and Quickly and, some of the more established starters leave for them. So I think it would almost be a bit of a mistake to have Jamal Shed, as talented as he is, go and wither away on a bench and maybe even pick up some bad habits this season for the Raptors. The smarter move is have him go down and be the guy playing big minutes in year one. And then I think it's only one season that this kid needs before he's going to be NBA ready.
Yeah.
So already he's a second round pick. So you've got more roster flexibility with him, the non-guaranteed contracts, this, that, the other. Unless you're Bronny James, who just signed the only first ever friggin' fully guaranteed multi-year one-way contract in NBA history. There's a topic for another episode. But I think that's the smart move. You stash Mobo, Shed, Chomchi down in the G League, develop them, see what they kind of turn into, and wash, rinse, repeat that model that got you the first ever NBA championship north of the border. And I think it's the smart move too, because beyond just Flag, there are some high-end talent available in this upcoming draft. I would be trying really hard once some of these last marquee free agents kind of sign their free agency deals and the market kind of cools a bit. I would be trying very hard to flip Brown before the season starts.
Yeah.
Because he is a legitimate NBA player.
Honestly, I think he's getting a lot of discredit being in the situation that he's in, because anyone who's watched him play, especially when he was with Denver, the guy is an absolute stud 6-man. That's his role. That's what he is meant to do in the NBA, and he's very good at it. And we've seen a lot of players have fantastic careers. Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams. Like, These are guys who kind of fit that mold of, hey, I'll pay you $25 million a year to come off the bench and be that energy person that we need. So don't take what we're saying as discrediting Bruce Brown at all. This guy is a legitimate NBA talent who needs to be in a position to play. I just don't think that in the situation that the Raptors are in, he fits what they want to do. So moving him out for an actual usable asset is prudent for both Bruce Brown and the Raptors.
Yeah, and that's the exact point, that I think the Raptors need to take to heart, is the fact that move him out because A, probably makes you a little bit worse overall on paper. B, it frees up minutes for this very young roster to get key developmental reps here.
Mhm.
And you can kind of then see who are the guys that we really want to build around beyond just RJ, Emmanuel Quickly and Scotty Barnes here. You got those three foundational pieces. What else can you kind of move around here? Again, picking up some draft capital would be great, but I think there's going to be a lot of teams with championship aspirations who might be flush up against the cap, who you might actually be able to pry a young asset away from, right?
Yeah.
And someone that they've been heavily linked to, again, the New York Knicks, I can guarantee you will kick the tires on it, especially now that they know Isaiah Hartenstein's not coming back, and they've probably got a few holes that they would still like to supplement, as good as their offseason has been. So I would be trying to really ship him out to make your team worse on paper, get some more developmental reps in there, because we saw it this year. If you keep him, and this is why a few episodes ago I said, like, it was kind of their nightmare scenario falling as far as they did and having that pick convert to San Antonio, because as currently constructed, they're kind of a fringe play-in tournament team, right? I think you kind of want to subtract, Brown and maybe even another piece if you can, to try and bottom out 1 year, bring up all the reserves from the G League next year, get a high blue chip prospect in. Now you're ready to really start kind of that next era of Raptors willing to compete. I don't think you flip Pirtle right now because you need someone at center, because if you don't have someone to defend the rim and clean the glass, that's how bad habits get formed.
Yeah.
So I think they hold on to him probably till the trade deadline and then flip him too.
Yeah. No, and it's a good point. I mean, on the topic of bigs, I think that that's exactly what the Raptors should be looking at if they're going to get an established player or a prospect back for Bruce Brown. A lot of teams give up on these young big men really early because they usually take a little bit longer to develop. So, again, this is me being the armchair GM. I'm scouring the rosters of a lot of these teams who think that they're one of these 2 to 3 guys away from making the next step. And I mean, again, I look at a team like the Pistons, even though they just went through a horrible season, they fired their coach, but they're making trades, they're signing players because they think that they have an optimistic view and they think they can be the next Houston Rockets, right? They can take the next step by bringing in some of these legit veterans. Well, there just so happens to be a very talented young center on that roster who didn't get a lot of playing time either in Golden State or in Detroit, and James Wiseman. So there's a name that I would kick the tires on. Is he worth the risk? I would say absolutely. He was the number 2 overall pick for a reason. He's got some talent. How can we get the most out of him? And maybe that's going down to a team like Raptors 905 and developing some of those good habits and then coming up halfway through the season and taking over for a Pirtle or a Kelly Olynyk who you could trade at the deadline to get more assets back. So again, good point by you, and just want to kind of snowball on that because I think it's very well suited for the current makeup of the roster for sure.
Yeah. Only asterisk to that is they would need to phone up the aforementioned Indiana Pacers, who just signed the Mr. Wiseman today.
Oh, well, there you go.
To join them. So we know Masai's at least got his number, though, based on the trades that they have been making in the past, for sure. But I mean, it'll be interesting.
I should have been checking the ticker as we were talking.
Yeah, that's what the show needs, a live NBA free agency frenzy ticker here. So let's go. We are willing to accept sponsorships to have your logo on our upcoming ticker for future episodes.
Yeah, if you want to invest some money in our ticker, we will absolutely make it worth your while. How that is, I don't know, but we will do it.